He's a commentator, and he has quite an experience of, well, his name says it all, juggling. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Late Double Low Studio. It's JuggleGod!
Hello. How's it going? How's it going? Thanks so much.
Of course.
For that intro. Excited
Thank you.
to be here.
I'm excited to have you here, JuggleGod. How are you doing, man? You're looking fantastic right now. I love the suits.
Yeah. You know, I went for something a little different. You know, I've got an entire closet full of these things, and you know, I typically just stick to the video games ones. But I've been known to throw on a couple from my time in the before times as a juggler. So yeah, this is one of them. Was always one of my favorites. I really like the tie, especially. Love this tie.
Let's get a little close about that. I do like that. Woo! And we also gotta say, JuggleGod, you're the first one to ever sit on the couch, to ever take the couch into their own background and become part of the set. Also, you're looking absolutely massive. Are you working out, or is it just the aspect ratio?
We'll say a little bit of both. We'll say a little bit of both there, Los. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, happy to have you here. And you know, one of the first questions that we always ask people is, how did you get your name? JuggleGod, walk me through it.
All right, I'll tell you the actual, like, the real origin story of this name now, right? So, back in 2000? Or was it 2001? One of the two is either my freshman or sophomore year of college, right? I'm dating myself here quite a bit, but it was either my freshman or sophomore year of college. AOL Instant Messenger was like the chat thing at the time, right? And so you could just register as many names as you wanted for free. So my roommate, one of my best friends, guy named Dave, who just absolutely phenomenal juggler, can juggle circles around me. He registered the name Good Juggler. And I was like, oh yeah? So I registered the name Better Juggler and then messaged him, and then he immediately registered the name The Best Juggler. And I was like, son of a bitch! Should have seen this coming. And so I was like, I'm out of options, JuggleGod. And so I went with that, and it's stuck ever since. That's just who I've been. So it's kind of funny. I'm not religious in any kind of way, so I guess that means I don't believe in myself.
Oh no! You always got to believe in yourself. That's the most important thing, because you got to be it's your mom, who's in my mom is in the chat right now, so she believes in me, and then it's also yourself. So you at least two people, right? You have to have your back, right?
That's absolutely right. I love it. Thank you for that. Thank you for the support.
But how did you get into juggling? We know you're the JuggleGod out of a petty AOL beef. Not really beef, but
yeah.
How did you become juggle noob, juggle apprentice, and eventually level your way up?
So it was my younger brother. This is like the origin story of all the juggling. My younger brother learned, or he was playing tennis, right? He's a couple years younger than me, and so at the time, he would have been in late elementary school, right? And I was just putting something back in his room. I was in middle school, and I saw like the can of 3 tennis balls somewhere, and I was like, I must have seen someone juggling or a juggler somewhere. I don't know. But I was just like, hey, I wonder if I can juggle. And so I pulled them out, put 2 of them in my right hand, 1 in my left, threw a couple. Was like, okay, that seemed about right. Threw 2 once again, and then I threw and caught all 3, and I was like, let's roll with this. So nothing had ever worked that naturally for me or that quickly in my life, and so I then spent, you know, like the next 30 minutes, hour, I don't know, my parents weren't home at the time, just trying out different things, and showed my mom a little routine when she got home. She was like, oh, that's nice, and then it just went from there. Excuse me. Found a juggler in my hometown who gave lessons, things like that. So I contacted him and just started watching videos. This was in a time before YouTube. So I was learning how to juggle out of books, out of old VHS tapes of the world championships from the early 90s, things like that. So that's where I got my start as a juggler. So just as a kid.
The VHS tapes. Were you going to Blockbuster and finding this?
No. These were all from my juggling coach at the time. I watched I can't tell you how many times I watched the 1990 and 91 International Jugglers Association Championships. I watched those things until the tape was destroyed practically. I mean, yeah, because that was all I had. I was absolutely obsessed with this at the time, and yeah, there's no YouTube. Hell, there weren't even DVDs, anything like that. So it was just over and over again watching same thing. But I ate it up. Absolutely loved it. I mean, you know what you're like as a kid. You'll watch the same movie 1,000 times.
I think for
So
me, it was Small Soldiers. I watched that movie a ton.
I don't remember that one.
Small Soldiers. It was like the toys where there's two types of toys. It was like the army toys, and then these like alien toys. My god, the Gorgonites, I think, versus like Chip Hazard, and okay, well, you know what? I like it. Ghostbusters, the original one. That was one that I watched a shit ton. Those are some of the classics. You had the IJA tapes.
I did. I was nerding out over juggling as a kid instead.
I mean, that's dope. I definitely want to learn more because I noticed that you were fucking crazy at it. You were really good. Yes. I mean, so much so that you were a accomplished performer. Specifically talking about IJA, and I believe you came in first place in different juggling competitions.
Yeah, I'm gotten gold, silver, and bronze in all sorts of different international competitions for juggling. The stage championships, the numbers championships, extreme juggling championships, as an individual and as a team in a lot of cases. So yeah, probably the one I'm most proud of is the first silver medal I got on the stage championships, because to me those are the most prestigious. That's where you have to put together like an 8-minute act and present it. And it takes into account like everything, not just the tricks you're doing, but also the performance, the execution, the creativity. If you come up with brand new things nobody had ever seen before, then that gets you points, things like that. So that's probably the one I'm most proud of. Even though I never got a gold in the stage championships, that silver, I think it probably speaks the most about my career and my path as a juggler. So yeah, my gold medals come from the extreme juggling championships and the numbers championships. I've got a few of those scattered around.
So what's the difference between all those championships?
So stage championships, like I said, it's a routine, right? Set to either music or you speak or whatever, combination of the two. The numbers championships is where you try to juggle more than anybody else for longer than anybody else. So for that one, I've got a team's gold and 3-person club passing. I think we did 15 clubs between the three of us, maybe just 14. It's been so long. And then for extreme juggling, that's where you try and hit just the most incredible trick you can. You've got 3 shots, sometimes just 2. So you have to really balance, like, okay, is this something I know I can hit, or am I going to go for broke here? Because like the guy before me just hit something insane, right? So that's the idea behind those. So I think I've got 3 or 4 extreme juggling golds. That one was one that I loved and just suited how I like to juggle. Had to go for broke, throw it all in one quick flurry, and see how it goes.
Did you have like a signature move that you had like this special trick name?
No, not exactly, because it was actually so I had 1 3-ball extreme juggling medal, and then most of the others were with a guy named Stefan Bransel, who's from Minnesota, and him and I both, well, I guess we just thought of things, things you would never think of, right? Like they were just off the wall. It was always something brand new that neither of us had ever done before. What we would do is at the beginning of the week for these international competitions and conventions, we'd get together and him and I would be like, all right, let's make up, like 10, 15, 20 new tricks or something. We'd come up with those, and then we'd pick the one we liked the most, or the 2 or 3 we liked the most, and we'd enter those tricks into the extreme juggling competitions. And so it was always something weird, always something wacky, and it really only lived for that 1 week, right? Because then he'd go back to Minnesota, I'd go back to Colorado, and then next year we'd forgotten what the hell we did the year before, so we just make up something new.
I guess you didn't have the VHS recordings of those competitions just to look back on?
No, there's the DVDs. There's the DVDs for sure, but yeah, I guess we never thought about that. That's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, I guess if it's already been done, right? You know?
Yeah, that's true too. Exactly. That's true, you know? So we don't want to rehash old stuff either.
So you definitely have done a lot of competitions, but you also were, I wouldn't say like a resident performer, but you had a solid performance off Broadway. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I was part of an off-Broadway three-person show called Laser Vaudeville. They performed at the New Victory Theater before my time. So, you know, the show kind of had the title off Broadway, even though I wasn't there during that time. But that was my first experience with like a big time touring show. And what was nice about this was like the part was already written for me. I just had to learn everything, right? And then, and for the most part, these were relatively easy tricks. You know, I was able to step into the show pretty easily, as you know, from a technical standpoint. Just had to learn the performative aspects of it. So did that for a few years, and then wrote my own show, which then toured theatrically. It was a show called Smirk, and we toured for about 10 years through theaters all across North America. And that was my bread and butter for a long time.
So was that involved with like acting? Is it mostly the tricks, or is it a combination of all three? Or
Combination of yeah, combination of all three, right? So it was a family show, right? So we wrote it to be appealing to a kids, their kids and their parents or grandparents, right? Like we hit those kind of like age groups specifically. And so we had different things in the show that kind of appealed to the different age groups, right? We had a lot of physical comedy for the kids, there's a lot of verbal comedy for the adults. And you know, you like to slip in things that go over kids' heads every now and then, right? But the adults laugh at. And then we had kind of a retro feel and characterization reminiscent of Abbott and Costello, and that always appealed to the older generation as well. So we kind of hit these three what am I like demographics, right? And put together a show based on that. It also took into account my science background. I'm actually a former research scientist as well. I've got two papers published, one about gene therapy and one about virology. And so
What?
we wanted to yeah. So we wanted to incorporate my science background into the show as well. And so my character was kind of like this overbearing, very particular former scientist as well. Like we used that actual aspect of my own life to help inform the character too. So if you're familiar with like Abbott and Costello, I mean, this is going back way back in time.
I know who they are. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was Bud Abbott. I was the straight man, right? The guy who would keep the other guy in place and everything. So yeah.
So now I want to know a little bit more about how you led into this path. So you studied science, research science in college, but why did you focus on juggling and theatrics?
So I was in graduate school in Houston, Texas. I was going to Baylor College of Medicine, and I first off I picked for a mentor, somebody who was just an absolute nightmare, just a horrible person to work for. Three people joined his lab the same year, myself and two of my close friends, and we all left his lab. I left after a year, my friend Omid left after 3, and my friend Lene left after 5. None of us got our PhDs. He was a nightmare. He was an absolute nightmare to work for, and I just got out of there quick. I was like, I'm not sticking around for this. And at the same time, when you're kind of going down that path, right, it can be a very dismal or bleak looking future in terms of like where you're putting your time, right? Oh no, did I DC?
No, I think you're,
oh, okay,
you're good
cool.
on my end.
Okay, cool. Things are a little wonky on my end. So
well, I think that's funny. A bleak and unknowing future, and now you're in casting, so that's
right. Well, bleak from the standpoint, right? Let me be clear about this. Like bleak from the standpoint of, you know, all of my time and energy was going to be devoted for the next decade or more to science, right? I mean, I was working like 60, 80-hour weeks in the lab, right? And you're just going to do that as a grad student in the biological sciences, right? And then I would move on to a postdoc where I'm going to be spending just about the same amount of time in the lab. And then maybe if I'm lucky, I get like a tenure track position as an assistant professor. And then if I publish well, work my ass off there, get lots of grants, get, lots of students, whatever, then maybe I could become a tenure professor, right? And I was just like looking at this path and saying to myself, like, nah, I am way too interested in too many other things in life to pigeonhole myself into just this one thing, right? So I have ADHD. It just wasn't gonna work for me, right? It just wasn't gonna work. So that's why I went that route.
Do you think I'm just completely unrelated. Do you think ADHD helps with juggling because you're just constantly doing a new thing every second?
Yes. yeah, absolutely. It helps with that. And then there's also like something that a lot of people who either don't have ADHD or don't have someone in their life who has it that impacts them in a dramatic fashion realize is that there's also this aspect of hyper focus that goes into ADHD as well. So when you find something you're interested in, you just go for it, right? It's like you've got to try and pry the person away from what they're interested in or what they're trying to do. And so that helped as well, right? And throughout my life, I've been able to just like channel that hyper focus, I think, into whatever area it is that I'm interested in. So that combination of things, I think, led to juggling being such a beautiful career for me. And honestly, I feel like it's the same thing with casting, right? That hyper focus helps. The ADHD thing is great because there's always new games coming out as well, right? Or new things happening in the gaming space. And so there's always new information, new things to look at. Something's always shiny in the casting world.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely true. So I want to know about like the departure from science into juggling. I guess we'll go through the history, but what made you be like, yes, let's do it. I'm going into juggling like big time.
It was actually the therapist that I was talking to while I was in grad school, right? Because at the time as well, I was going through like a really rough breakup. I'd been dating this girl for about 4.5 years. Was getting ready to propose to her, and she said she didn't know this, but she was like, "Hey, I think it's time for me to move on," or something like that. And I was like, "Well, shit." So like everything in my life was kind of like crumbling.
You didn't buy the ring, did you?
No, but I had been talking about it. I had been talking about it. I've been, looking at places to shop, this, that, and the other. So
I used my degree grant on this.
What's that?
I used my science grant on this.
Right, exactly. No, fortunately, didn't get that far. And as a grad student, you don't have any money, so I was getting her a ring pop, which actually I think another caster actually did with his wife, in a super cool way. Like I don't want to knock that idea by any stretch of the imagination, because it's not always about the money, that's behind it. But tangent, getting back to moving from the science career to the juggling career, I was just seeing this therapist and I was debating, like I don't know where I want to move to, don't know what I'm gonna do with the rest of my life, and my therapist was like, well, why don't you try juggling? And I'd thought about it a few times in my life, right? Going down that career path, but I'd always said no because I didn't want something that I loved as a hobby to turn into something that I hated as a career, right? So I avoided it for a long time. But at this point, for whatever reason, when she said, I was like, you know what? Screw it. Let's throw all that out the window and let's give it a shot. And so that's when I moved to Colorado because Dave, the guy who I had the username fight with, right? The good juggler, best juggler, better juggler, whatever. I was chatting with him, and he was just like, "Why don't you move to Colorado with me?" And I was like, "You know what? Why not?" Didn't have anything else better to do. Didn't want to move back home because I was from the South. Didn't really like the culture there too much. I went to undergrad in Rochester, New York, and I just could not handle the snow, the weather there. I mean, it's a beautiful place in a lot of ways, but my God, for 9 months, that place is a gray, desolate wasteland.
Well, I mean, you could have stuck it out for about 15 years and you'd be right on time for the GLG Gaming Lounge.
Wait, what? In Rochester, New York?
Yeah, that's where GLG's at.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea. That's really neat. So I didn't want to move back there. Didn't want to stay in Houston, and so yeah, my old friend Dave, he was like, yeah, just move in with me in Colorado, and I literally had nothing better to do, and it just turned out that Colorado is actually an amazing place to go to try and launch a career as a juggler.
Why? Why there specifically?
There are a lot of so in Boulder, Colorado specifically, which is where I live. There's a place called Pearl Street, which is a it's like a tourist destination, right? It's about like 4 city blocks long, pedestrian mall, and street performers perform there. And when you're getting your start as a juggler, street performing is probably the best thing you can do for yourself, because kind of what it teaches you is that if you can, convince somebody or lots of people to stop going wherever they were headed, that what you're doing is more important than that they should watch you and then pay you for that at the end. If you can do that, then you can perform anywhere, literally, right? You're outside, you don't have stage lighting, you don't have sound equipment, you don't have anything. So if you can pull an audience, if you can entertain people on the streets, you can literally do it anywhere, right? And so it's street performing is just this amazing place, or the streets are just this amazing place to cut your teeth as a juggler and as a performer. And so I did that for 5 years, and I set myself a limit. I was like, I'm going to do it for only 5 years, and then I'm going to move off the streets into something else, because I'd seen way too many people kind of get addicted to the street performing life and just stay there, even though they had aspirations to move on to different venues. And I was like, that's not going to be me. So did it for 5 years. And from there, I'd already started moving into cabaret, smaller venues, things like that, and then eventually into the big theaters.
How do you move from going onto the street into one of those more like established scenarios? Like, it's not like you have a reel. Do you kind of go up and say, like on the spot, like, yo, check this out?
Yeah, a lot of what it is word of mouth, right? So there's in any bigger city, you're gonna find like talent agents, right? Who are kind of like the local talent agents. So they'll either see you on the streets, or they'll learn about you through one of your other performing friends, this, that, and the other. And then you can get invited to like fairs and festivals. So that's like typically the next step you go, right? Because it's still outside. It's still, not necessarily much tech support around you, but the audience is there. They're coming to the event. They're paying to get into the event, right? It's a step up towards a more organized and presented venue of performing as well. So you move on to like fairs and festivals, and from there you can start to put together a reel, right? Promo materials, things like that, a resume. So that's typically like the next step. And then kind of once you do that, you can start feeling out where you want to go next, right? Because there's so many different paths you can take in the juggling world. You can go to cruise ships, you can do corporate, you can do theaters, you can do schools, you can do libraries, retirement homes. Like all of these are actually very viable and very lucrative as well.
How much would you make on the street? Because you said some people can get addicted to that, and I'm thinking, like, is that very sustainable?
Oh, insanely sustainable. So myself, I never quite cracked $200 in one show on the streets, and this is for like about a 25 to 30 minute show, right? So I never quite cracked that mark. I think the closest I made was like 187, something like that. But I've got friends who, like, a bad show out on Pearl Street is like $300, right?
What?
And yeah, there's been people who've cracked 900, maybe even 1,000 in one show on Pearl Street.
And how many shows would you do a day?
It depends on the season, but if you're talking like peak season, you're looking at 2 to 3.
Oh,
if you're
man.
if you're kind of like on the edge, you can probably get in 4 or 5, right? And if you're willing to maybe go to a location that isn't as prime, but during like the prime season, you could probably get in 4 or 5 shows too. You're not going to make quite as much per show, but you do more, you're going to make more overall that day.
That's pretty wild. So you were looking to get into cabaret and things like that. How did you progress further?
So it was actually a good question. It was from the streets to... Actually, I had a very backwards progression, because I I auditioned at a circus school, right? And then kind of my backup plan was to work with the guy who became my partner for 15 years, Reed Bellstock. And so him and I started practicing and working together, right? And I performed at the local juggling convention in Boulder, Colorado. And the two who ran that juggling convention were the two who were a part of the theater show that I ended up joining, that off-Broadway show. So they just saw me in this um at this convention, in this the public show at the convention. They liked what they saw and they needed a third member, and they asked me if I wanted to come on board. So I did that. And then when I decided to leave that show was when I had to go back and kind of like learn everything that I skipped. So that's when I became a street performer. And but kind of simultaneously, I was working with this gentleman, Reed Bellstock, and he got me into this cabaret called Lanny's Clock Tower. Well, it was called Lanny's Clock Tower Cabaret at the time. It's now just the Clock Tower Cabaret. But it was a burlesque, comedy, and variety venue. And so I started performing down there regularly. And in fact, even kind of at the peak of my career, I was doing 2-3 shows there a week, as well as traveling all the time over the weekends or over the beginning of the week. I was emceeing shows at the Clock Tower. The Clock Tower, actually, it became my home away from home. So that was where I kind of like got my foot in the door for the cabaret. And again, you're on the stage, you can start to put materials together, things like that, and perform there. So that's what I did.
So were you doing stand-up as well?
There's aspects of stand-up to what I did, but I wouldn't say that I did just straight stand-up, right? Just me with a mic telling jokes. I never did that. I took a lot of stand-up courses that would incorporate that kind of comedy into what I did, but it was never the focus, right? Because stand-up is a very specific kind of comedy, right? And I was more interested in character comedy and the dynamics between yourself and another person on stage. So that was kind of my bread and butter. That's what I loved. I loved the comedy that just arose from two personalities kind of clashing together on stage. So that's where that came from.
Oh, he's got it. He's got the L fuel. He has it. Yes. Yes. It's going wild, folks. I'm glad you bring that onto the stage, but this isn't the only time that you've been on a talk show stage. You were on David Letterman.
Yes.
How and why? What was it like? How'd you get there first?
So I had learned this sideshow trick called blockhead, right? Which is traditionally where you take a nail and you put it into your nose, into your skull, right? And you kind of like hammer it back there. And so I'm not a scary, kind of intimidating guy like a lot of these sideshow performers are, but I learned this trick. And it came very easily to me. For whatever reason, I just don't have much of a sneeze reflex, I guess. So I took it and I was like, oh, how can I make this silly? How can I make this goofy? How can I make this more me, right? I didn't want it to be the standard, traditional sideshow thing because it's been done over and over. It's just boring at this point, right? And so I started brainstorming different things I could do. And the two things that I settled on, my routine came in 3 parts. I would put a screwdriver in my nose to demonstrate, what this trick was. And then after that, I built a blowgun that I could stick in my nose and shoot a dart out of. And then I also found a bubble blower that was from Walmart. Like, if you're looking for a place that has things you can stick up your nose, go to Walmart. So I've had this bubble blower that I can stick in my nose and blow bubbles out of.
Kids 5 and under, keep that in mind.
Exactly. And so I had routines built around these things. The bubble blowing one was very silly. I would dance around on stage to the 2001 Space Odyssey theme, and at the very end of it, blow bubbles while twirling ribbons and shit. It was goofy as hell, right? I had dancers come out on stage behind me and wave flags and shit as I was doing this. It was just it was this whole ridiculous production, right? And so I sent these 3 things to. There was just an email, right? There was just like an email. If you dug deep enough on the Late Show website, you could find an email address to send your ideas or your tapes to the show, see if they were interested. So that's what I did. I was like, hey, I've got these 3 things. Didn't hear anything for months. finally got an email back, and they were like, yeah, send us videos of the blowgun and the bubbles. And so I did. Months went by, didn't hear anything. All of a sudden, get a phone call out of the blue. It's like, hi, this is Ryan with the Late Show with David Letterman. I was like, holy shit! And that's just kind of where it started. I got flown out once initially to try out on site, right? Because they actually fly out 5 or 6 acts and then choose from those who's actually going to make it on stage. And they do that because you never know if like a flight's going to get canceled, or if somebody gets there and they're kind of an asshole, with Letterman, or if they get there and the trick just doesn't work on camera, right? And so the first time I went out, it was the latter case. I got cut. The trick didn't work on camera. So I just talked to some of the producers and said, hey, what could I do to fix this or to make this better or work on TV? And they gave me a couple things. They were just like, yeah, it should, we can't see the dart. So try and figure out a way to fix this. And then at the time I was shooting the dart into a grapefruit, and they were like, that's not very exciting. See if you can come up with something else that has more of a finish or something to it. And so that became a balloon. So I went back, I figured out how to make this dart glow. And fired it into a balloon. And second time I went out, got on the show.
Did they pay you for that?
Yes, you get a small performance fee or something. I had to sign like a SAG-AFTRA contract as well.
Oh, nice! So you got the SAG waiver.
Yeah, so at least I had that. And the cool thing was I was getting dividend checks in the mail every now and then, because every time they re-aired the episode, they pay you for it again. Each time it was a little bit less, but you would get money. And I think the last one I got was like for 47 cents because they aired it in Singapore or something. So
I guess that ad space isn't too expensive over there.
That's not, yeah. And again, it was like every consecutive appearance was like a lot less money. So I think like the first time I got like $600, something like that. Second time was closer to 300, and then like 100, and then it just trailed off into relatively nothing.
I mean, that's notoriety and a G. I mean, 100% absolute W. That's so cool.
Yes. Yeah, it was great.
What was
such an experience?
Like the backstage experience like? Did you have a green room? How did they treat you?
They treat you amazingly well. The whole staff there is just fantastic. Or it was. I mean, the show's gone now, or Stephen Colbert has it now. But actually, somebody who I knew from my time, I got my start theatrically in improv, actually. And one of the people that I knew from that is now a writer on Stephen Colbert's show, which is really cool. Got another friend who writes for the Amber Ruffin show, which airs on Oxygen, something like that. Anyway, like a lot of people came out of this little theater in Denver called the Bovine Metropolis, and we've all gone on to do some pretty cool things. But back to what you were asking, which was, remind me what. I get off on tangents. You
the
can
backstage
see the ADHD
experience
coming out now, I think, right?
the backstage experience at David Letterman.
Yeah, so Ryan Williams, he was the talent guy who brought us on. Super nice guy. Whole staff there was really, really amazing. Do you remember Biff Henderson from Letterman?
No. To be honest, and this is odd, I don't watch any late night talk shows.
That was like my bread and butter. Like, honestly, I loved that stuff growing up. I used to watch it all the time. Really big fan of at least like all of those traditional late night hosts. Now that Conan is gone, though, it's sad times. But
Los is here. Juggle, you don't have to worry.
Exactly. But Biff Henderson, he was the stage manager for Letterman, like legitimately, and he would also come on as like a character a lot of times as well to the show. And Biff was just the nicest guy. Super, super nice, super friendly. Really gracious, very excited for everybody who was there as well. Because I mean, he sees like top guests all the time, but he treated us all, like we were stars, like we were friends, whatever. He was just so kind. The one thing that I will say is that the backstage there is tiny. It is so small. I was not prepared for that. I was not ready for that. I thought, I was expecting some huge thing, but it was like, it was like stone tunnels with like the swinging light, just on a cord or something, right? Like, that was, we were down in the basement. The second time I went there, that was where a green room was. The first time I was there was like right off the stage, but still it was like this tiny little room. Is smaller than my office at home was the green room, right? and you'd see like whole bands stacked up in there. I think who was it? Oasis was on that same night that I was there.
Oh, so were you
One of
just
the
chilling
times.
with Oasis?
Yeah. I got to meet Steve Martin as well. He was on the
Oh,
night that I was there, so that was really really cool as well. We got to just say, like, hi, love your work, and that was about it, right? Because I didn't want to bother him either, right? Because I mean, he's there to do work, and uh, you know,
I mean, to be
I
fair, so are you.
yes, yes, exactly. That's true too. But I didn't want to bother him or take up too much of his time either. So just a quick hi, love your stuff, you're great, that kind of thing. So that was really neat. That was really really neat.
That's so cool. Wow. I mean, hey, what a dope experience. And now, as you've moved on into casting, well, you're on another late night talk show. I want to talk about how you got into commentating. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so this is an interesting path as well. So, we'll go back to the late '90s now, when I was in high school. Right, I was in high school from '96 to 2000, and um, at that time, Quake was out, and even before that, I would my family was very lower middle class, right, and so we couldn't afford a whole lot. My the computer that I had growing up in high school, I built and paid for all on my own. Um,
Like you
and
like computers got built in the same way back then too. I thought it was just like here's the gateway, boom, just put it in the computer room.
yeah, no, I worked in a computer repair store in high
Oh,
school, and
okay.
so I was in the build department, and so we would build these custom computers, and so that's how I learned to build my computer. But yeah, going back even to like middle school, maybe even late elementary school, when I would visit my family who was in North Carolina. I grew up in Virginia. I visited my family in North Carolina. My uncle, he was a programmer, and so he had a nice computer. And he had Wolfenstein 3D on it, and so that was my first taste of FPS games, and I fell in love with it. Right, like
It's
we'd
a
go
good
down
one.
to visit my family. All I wanted to do was sit on the computer and play Wolfenstein. Right. Um, so when Quake came out, when I was in high school, I could buy my own computer. I just went nuts. I became a pretty high ranked speed runner in Quake. I was in like the top 20 to 30 at the time, right? So I was kind of at the genesis of speed running as well, just as a genre, right, in video games. Um, I played original Team Fortress, which was a Quake mod. Everybody knows Team Fortress 2,
TF1.
right? TF1, a Quake mod. Nothing to do with Half-Life, right? Which is, I think it was Half-Life that TF2 was based off of, or was it?
CS.
No, it
Wait,
wasn't
oh wait,
CS.
no.
It was Half-Life.
CS was based off of Half-Life, which was based off of TF. Are you saying that Half-Life was based off of TF1?
No. TF2 just used the engine for Half-Life,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think is what it was. So like Half-Life came out, and then Team Fortress 1 had been out for a long time. I don't know if it was the people who developed original Team Fortress or whatever. They approached Valve or whoever it was at the time who had Half-Life and said, "Yeah, we want to make this now for you guys." And so it was. I'm pretty sure it was Valve and Half-Life that went on to make TF2. But yeah, so like my FPS predates even that, right? So TF1. So I got really really into that in late high school. But then when I went to college, the juggling kind of took off, and so video games just kind of fell off the radar. And plus, I mean, there weren't esports around, right? If I were going to college now, right, and I'd been in the same place, I probably would have been looking right at these esports programs, trying to get a scholarship, this and the other, whatever. But at the time, there was nothing like that, not even close. And so it kind of like just fell off the radar for me. And then we're gonna fast forward now 2 to 3 summers ago, the summer of COVID. Um, no, the summer right before COVID hit. I found out that I have a genetic autoimmune disease called ankylosing spondylitis, and it had just started to have an impact on my life. So this disease is very similar to rheumatoid arthritis, and in fact, it's more common than it, but it's less known. And so essentially, what's happening is my immune system is attacking the connective tissue in between every single bone and joint in my body, right? And so it's just this systemic inflammation that happens. And so the reason we found out about it was because I went to a juggling festival and I came back and I was like, oh, I'm having like some problems with my wrists and with my elbows, right? Um, and so I was like, all right, I'm gonna take some time off from juggling. It took a few weeks off, and my arms were getting worse. So then I was like, oh well, maybe it's I'm using the computer too much. So I was like, I'm gonna stop gaming because at this point I'd gotten back into Overwatch, right? Overwatch had happened 5-6 years ago. I rediscovered FPS games, just gaming in general, and fell in love with Overwatch in a huge way. And a big part of that was Wrecking Ball because, again, it appealed to my speedrunner background. I was like, you're kidding me. There's a character now whose weapon is his mobility. His mobility? That's my bread and butter, right? So I just fell in love with Wrecking Ball. Also, he's a ball that goes in hand with the juggling. I have pet rats. I love, so the hamster thing was cool. And my last name is actually Hammond. So I looked at this character and I was like, Blizzard made this for me. They didn't know it, but they made this hero for me.
They actually saw
Right,
you on Letterman, and they're like, let's keep that tucked away for about 5 years or so.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's just beautiful, right? I love connecting with this character, with this hero. So I'd gotten back into FPS gaming, right? So anyway, arms were starting to hurt more, so I dropped the gaming. I dropped using the computer, and then I was like, well, shit, maybe it's just like using my phone and my iPad, right? Because I just started playing some games on my iPad and things like that. And I was like, I can't even do this anymore. My arms were just getting worse and worse. It got to the point where they diagnosed me with carpal tunnel, cubital tunnel, golfer's elbow, and tennis elbow in both arms, right? And I was cutting literally everything out of my life that I was doing that had anything to do with my arms. And so finally, the doctors were like, okay, something else is going on here. They sent me to a rheumatologist. And right off the bat, they found it. They did some blood work, found a genetic marker for ankylosing spondylitis, and diagnosed me and started getting me treatment. And so the great thing about it is it's very treatable. And if you catch it early, there's no like long-term effects. So because I'm getting treatment, there's, nothing really bad is going to happen to me. It's not like threatening anything like that. It's completely manageable, but I'm going to be taking medicine the rest of my life, right? And different kinds as well, because it's, some of the meds work for a little while, then you got to go on to a different one, yada, 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 or stronger ones or whatever. So I took a look at things and I was looking at like all the different triggers for flares and, the ones that was out there, the triggers that were out there in the literature, but also the ones that I was experiencing as triggers. And so many of them were tied to things that would have just gotten exacerbated by the lifestyle of the juggler that I just said to myself, I don't think this is tenable anymore, right? I don't think I can do this anymore. So I had to retire from that career. But what I think is really great is I honestly did everything I wanted to in that career. I feel that I came, I saw, I did, I conquered, whatever, right? I won world championships. I had a touring theater show. I got to travel all over the U.S. I've been to 46 states. It was just a wonderful time of my life. And
which ones haven't you been to?
It's North Dakota, Montana, Hawaii, and Maine. That's the last one. Yeah. Actually went on a tour through Alaska, which was awesome.
That does sound pretty crazy. What was the craziest? Sorry, I'm derailing you. I kind of want to just know a little bit more.
Yeah, no, and I tend to gab forever. I'll just talk and talk and talk. It's why I cast.
What's the craziest tour or the craziest show, experience, tournament that you have ever been on?
Oh.
And while you're thinking, did you ever find out who stole the Wii?
Wait, who stole the Wii? What?
Did you ever find out who stole the Wii? I believe that was at a IJA back in 2011.
Are you looking up notes about that? I know what you're talking about. No. We never found out. We never found out who stole that Wii. Holy shit, dude! You're the research team this guy has on his show, top notch, second to none.
Thank you.
This is funny. Riley in chat says Pog Juggle went through Minnesota. As a matter of fact, my the director of my show is from Minneapolis, so I was in the Minneapolis St. Paul area a lot. Became very, very fond of the area. So loved Minnesota. It's in a lot of ways Minneapolis St. Paul is, it's a little like it's like a well kept secret. That city's pretty cool in a lot of ways. So Yeah, craziest thing. I mean, Letterman for sure. I mean, that's just a highlight in so many ways. Um, but the Alaska tour, honestly, probably the most dramatic. There was a lot of drama that was happening within the show. It was right before I left the show as well. So there was a lot of stuff that I just wasn't happy about after that tour, even though I loved the entire time there, right? There were so many cool things that happened. I got to go dog sledding. I got to visit an ice hotel. Um, yeah, it was just an amazing experience, amazing time. Got to fly to Kodiak Island, where one end of the runway is the ocean, the other end of the runway is a cliff face practically. It is just so cool to go places like that, and um, got to drive by Denali. Uh, yeah, Alaska was a really cool experience. But then there was the time I was in El Paso for another international festival and just walked across the border to Juarez and bought myself a suit for a 3-piece suit for $80, and got to try out. Yeah, a silver suit. You'll see. I wear it sometimes. I usually save that one for I don't know, the winners bracket semis or quarterfinals of competitions. I like to put it not as the final suit I wear, but somewhere close.
Silver
But it's this
semi,
beautiful silver suit. Yeah. Exactly. So that was really cool. I did stoplight juggling in Berlin, Germany. That was really fun.
What is that?
Stoplight. What's that?
Is that running in front of a stoplight and then juggling?
Yes. Yeah. It's this very niche area of street performing that I'd never done before. It's not really a thing here in America, although it's starting to be more. So I guess it wasn't at the time. But honestly, I vastly preferred it to street performing because you go out there for literally 60 seconds, minute and a half, however long the stoplight was, throw out a short routine, and then just walk down the line of cars with a hat. People give you money. I couldn't believe actually how much I made doing stoplight juggling in Berlin, having especially never done it before. Yeah, it was really cool. I think I made 90 euros in about an hour or so. So yeah. And that's easy work. It was easy work, So it was hey, we wanted to do. It was when my wife at the time and I were on our honeymoon, and so it's oh well, we wanted to go do this in Berlin today, but we're short a little bit. All right, let's go do some traffic light juggling, and then we could go do whatever we wanted. So yeah,
that's pretty
in
dope.
Iceland. I got to perform with the one circus that there is in Iceland. That was really cool too.
They gotta bring you in for the halftime show for Masters. Once you're done casting it,
right?
You go out, just go to the stage.
Yeah, Iceland, beautiful place. If you ever get to visit, go there. Ever have the opportunity? Such a cool place. Without
a doubt. But okay, now we can go back to casting. So you figured out the condition, and you loved Overwatch. Where are we at next?
So, I just went online. Yeah, I've been watching Overwatch League, right? So a lot of my friends, we'd get together and we would my roommates at the time. It was actually my roommates at the time who got me into Overwatch. So we'd all get together and we'd watch OWL and have a blast with it. And so I just thought, well, this could be something fun to do, right? I don't know where, when, or why that thought got in my head. Maybe I should try casting, right? But I did. And so I contacted an organization called Owlet, which is actually the exact same place that Necra got her start as well. She just got promoted to Overwatch League as a commentator. So her and I shared this background, and we've actually got some mutual friends from that time as well. So got in touch with Owlet and looked on. There's a place called broadcast.gg, which I know you know of. I watched a video. It was actually Lemon Kiwi and Mushu Beef. They put together one on introduction to casting. So I watched that to prepare for my first cast, and then I just messaged the surfer was like, "Hey, I think I'd like to give this a shot. Is there someone, who'd be willing to do this with me?" Um, understanding that I've never done it before, and this guy named Amintus responded almost right away and was like, "Yeah, sure, absolutely, let's do it together." And he hadn't done it yet either, or he'd done one cast I think before that, and so another person was there as well. And so it was actually a trio cast. We did that at first because I was like, I'm really not sure if I'm quite ready for this. Turns out I was like vastly over prepared. And just rocked that first cast, myself and Amintus and this other guy named Llama who I never heard from again. But then Amintus messaged me immediately after that first cast and was like, "Hey, let's do this again. Like, I think we had, great synergy, this, that, and the other. Let's, if you're interested, we'd love to work with you." And he became my casting partner for about the first 6 months of me casting. And it was after that very first game that I cast. After I hung up the call and everything in Discord, I just like jumped up and down. I ran around my room like I was almost crying. I was so happy because I don't think I'd realized how much the being in entertainment meant to me as a juggler, right? Or just being in entertainment in general. And I missed it. I missed it a lot. And this was, COVID had been going on for a little while, and so even if I had wanted to stay a juggler, it was likely I couldn't. So it's just so many emotions, so many great emotions after that first cast, that I immediately dove back into it and just started grinding as hard as I could, getting feedback from just so many amazing people in the industry and coaching from so many amazing people in the industry, and just been grinding it ever since. So that's
Yeah.
the origin story of me. Actually, overall, that's the Warren JuggleGod Hammond path and story. I don't think I've gotten to tell that as one whole thing before. So this is really cool to get to share that with everyone.
It's really cool to hear it. Like, that is just an amazing journey, and just like the grinding. You chose two careers which involve so much grinding.
Yeah, yeah. But it's what I love, and I really looked a lot into ADHD and what it meant for me because I got diagnosed as an adult, right? As a child, I was always had really high GPA. Um, I went to grad school, like there weren't the normal red flags I think that you see for children who have ADHD, especially in the 90s, right? When we were really just starting to kind of wrap our heads around this as a condition. So, uh, one of the things about having ADHD is that a lot of times you can't you can't work a job that you aren't passionate about, that you don't love, that you don't find drive in, and that was really the case for me. I just can't do it. I can't go into an office, do a 9 to 5. It just I've tried it, and it always ends poorly, right? It always ends with me, like my work quality drops, my commitment levels drop, this, that, and the other. But being in an entertainment industry, it just keeps me motivated, keeps me moving, keeps me pushing, and wanting to improve. And so it's the great thing is too. I think there's a lot of immediate feedback as well, right? Like you know how you did, and getting that immediate validation and feedback is really important too to people with ADHD as well. So yeah, I like being open about a lot of these things. Like I like being an advocate for because ankylosing spondylitis is a disability. I like being an advocate for mental health for people with disabilities in gaming, for LGBTQIA plus as well. Like these are all things that are kind of near and dear to my heart. And one of the great things too, I think, about being a caster is I get to speak up about a lot of these things and be an advocate for people in those communities, like within the gaming community as a whole. So yeah, um, tangent as well, but it just makes me happy. Like there's so much to me that's fulfilling about this career, right? From getting to be an advocate to being in front of people to getting to talk about and do something I love and enjoy. It's yeah, it just it hooked me. It hooked me almost immediately in the same way that being a juggler did. It was a very immediate yes, this is right. This is for me. So yeah.
I mean, based off of the reaction from your first cast, I think that's like the best omen you could have, right? Just the exhilaration out of it, for sure.
Yeah.
I've felt that, but it's kind of like a combination of, oh, okay, you did it, you're good, and then also, let's fucking go, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's this weird mix of like this is sometimes mental and physical exhaustion, but at the same time you've got this adrenaline running through your veins still, right? So it's this weird mix of I am very, very hyped and excited right now, but like also, holy crap, I just ran a marathon kind of a feeling. It's a very unique a very unique place to be, a very unique experience that I think we get to have as casters.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be able to entertain. I'm right there with you. I couldn't do office work. It doesn't appeal to me. The only office work I've ever done was me working on being an entertainer within an office setting as well. And like
Really?
because I was a host for this financial news website. Like it was just sponsored content bullshit. But I was on camera doing that. I was also a host for this gaming and esports news show on Snapchat Discover, and that was shot
Very
within
cool.
an office. But I never did straight office work, you know?
Right, right. Oh, that's very interesting. I had no idea that you had that background in entertainment as well, even before doing casting.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
I've done a lot of shit.
You know, I think that's probably more common than we realize in this space because this is a very unique space, and you don't just happen to get here randomly.
Yeah.
You know, you've probably spent some time looking for something, or trying out other things that are tangentially related. So I could see that. I could see that for sure.
Well, I mean, you've done quite a bit. I mean, you've had 2 careers in entertainment, and I want to do a little bit of fun, a combination of those 2. You are the Juggle God.
Yes.
And I do want to see some juggling, but I also want to add a little bit of extra flavor to it. Now, you have those skills. You have the multi-talents. Now, I want to try and put them together. Would you be able to commentate and juggle at the same time? Is that possible?
You know, I've never tried it, but it 100% is. I bet if nothing else, I could keep 3 juggling balls going while commentating. So, do you have like a clip or something prepared for me to commentate?
We do have a clip prepared. And this will be a little bit easier because you have actually casted over this. This is the EMEA.
I was gonna say I
lower
recognize
finals.
Matlock's and Ilby. Yeah, and Logic's. Yep. This game is familiar. This was just this past weekend.
So we're gonna hit it with a revamp, adding an extra piece of flavor. So if you're ready, we can make this happen.
Let's do this because there's
Hold on,
like honestly, this is great because like so many people have asked me to do this so far. This is the first opportunity I've had to do it, right? Because I'm not going to do it in the course of a regular cast or broadcast, right? So yeah, hold on, let me these right here, and then let's see here. Can you see this?
Yes, we
Is this
can see
coming
it.
through?
We can see it.
Okay, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Okay, I'm good.
All right.
We're gonna keep going. I'm started. We're not stopping.
We've also got some circus music as well, so let's get it.
All right, now point gonna be hotly contested here. It's Busan Sanctuary right now. Got a little bit of a disrupting composition going up against what I believe is a 6-man dive. Gonna be Suyo now layering a lot of damage with that tack visor, but not gonna find any kills from it. Could be this gravitic flux that ends up doing it. Again, Amaze having to split his attention between the point and the choke as well, but doing a fantastic job of it. Nice bash there from Brier. Gonna be able to help take out Winston from the fighter, at least dissuade him from staying on that point. And already we've seen 40% captured by the squad in blue. Transcendence has to be committed in response to that coalescence as well. Ben Best now on the wrecking ball, seeing if they can create a little bit more space. Nice boop there onto the Moira. Got to be able to take D.Va out of her mech as well. Point gonna be flipping over to the red side, but already 60% on the board for blue. So red has a tough road ahead of them.
That is beautiful, beautiful stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, JuggleGod. That was great. That
was harder than I thought. Oh, and I moved my green screen. Hold on a second. We gotta deal with that.
I adjusted you too, so we can bring it back.
I do appreciate that. That was harder than I thought it was gonna be.
That was awesome. The fact that you could do that is crazy. I would never in my dreams be able to put those two together. Just the hand-eye coordination, the muscle-mind connection is just insane. So thank you so much, Juggle, for bringing that here to the studio. Thank you for sharing your story as well. But we got one more question for you. Where can the people at home find you?
Check me out on Twitter at JuggleGod. That is the place you want to go to keep up with everything that I do. So whether or not you're gonna see me on Twitch, YouTube, wherever, check Twitter first. That's the hub for information JuggleGod related. So yeah, be sure to follow me there. I also stream on Twitch, very casually though. I just like to do it for fun. It's not, my main thing, but come say hi there as well. Always have a lot of fun trying out new games. And those are, I've got a YouTube channel as well, JuggleGod, so you can see me there. You can also check out my time on Letterman. That clip is up there, so if you want to see me fire a glowing dart out of my nose and pop a balloon on The Late Show with David Letterman, look no further than that link. You'll also find some juggling clips of me hitting some of my biggest stuff that I've ever hit before. So I've got a couple of short videos on there of some pretty beefy tricks.
Ladies and gentlemen,
like some 5-ball back crosses, 9 balls, things like that. So
well, I'm getting the link right now. I'm getting the link right now.
Hell yeah.
Yes, that's the right one. I also wonder, why'd you go with the long hair? Why didn't you keep the very 2000s spiky hair look?
It was time. It was time to move on, I grew a COVID beard because I thought, why not? And I just never felt like going out to get my hair cut either, because I was like, I don't want someone near that near my face. I literally wrote my qualifying exam in graduate school on coronavirus. So I knew what we were about to be headed into, and I didn't want any of that. So I was one of the most paranoid, safety cautious, safety concerned people. So there was no way in hell I was going to see a barber during all that time. So I was like, I guess my hair is getting long, and I kind of started to dig it. So here we are.
Hey, well, it looks good. A handsome guest to join us here on Late Night with Lowe's, but that's going to be it for us here at the studio. Thank you so much for joining.